Hey, everybody, welcome to the Book Leads Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. I'm your series host and leadership performance coach, John Jaramillo. This podcast series is about getting to the books that have impacted the colleagues in my network, my friends. So these are great leads that I'll be interviewing on those books that we cover. And the way that I've covered them is three categories. The first category is books that I've never read that they're sharing with me, schooling me on. The second one is a category where we've both read the book, whether specifically for the episode or in our past lives before this series. The third one is if I'm speaking to the writer of the book or the publisher of the book and they want to share what the message of the book is all about. But I want to know which book it is that has impacted my guest the most or a lot in their work, their leadership, their life. I mean, these lessons cross all these different areas. So for this episode, my guest will be Prati Kaufman. Prati is a leading global marketing and human energy expert based out of West Hartford, Connecticut. After 20 plus years in marketing across the globe, working with everyone from local entrepreneurs to Fortune 500 companies, she quit her job 4 years ago. And in those 4 years, she has grown from a one person company to a full service marketing agency. Her agency helps small business owners get in front of the right audience with laser focused, integrated marketing. And to me, she's a close friend. She's a confidant. She's a motivator. She's a coach. She's my partner in crime on Mindset Talks, Life Beyond the Checkboxes, which is a podcast she and I have where we just riff on ideas. We pick a topic and go at it, discussing it from our varied backgrounds. Um, we're both coaches in different fields, but we don't even come at it as coaches, just our everyday selves. And that was just based on conversations that we had about everyday topics. And we're like, you know what? We should start recording these, put it out there and see if we can start those kind of conversations. And just, I've learned a lot from the series. So check that out. But Prati, thank you for sitting down with me for this conversation.
Anytime, and thank you for inviting me, John.
Absolutely. So I know you pretty well, but why don't you, for the people listening and watching, tell us who you are today, what you're up to, what's the work that you're carrying out today?
I mean, you gave a pretty good intro, but this is kind of the official intro. Honestly, I always feel like my ultimate purpose, right, in life is to create a very empowered community of men and women. So that's what I think my purpose is. And I do it through marketing, my energy coaching, but it's really the idea is how do we play in the possibilities, right? Not in the lack, but in what all things are possible, and how do we stay playing in that place all the time.
So what does that look like in your work, for instance? I'm curious how, and well, I have a good idea, but I want to explain it for my audience. What does that look like when you take on your clients? Because based on what you're saying, I can see a lot of clients coming in with a belief that this is the way you're going to work. And then when they work with you, it's kind of like you open up their eyes to what else is available, or you expand their thinking. Am I right in thinking that way?
Exactly that. We always say you can have a goal, like you can go to a destination, but we don't realize there are at least 15 to 20 ways to get there, right? So we get so stuck with our path, like this is what I've decided, instead of just staying open and moving in that direction and allow the life to reveal all the other things which will be revealed on that path.
So what kind of work specifically do you do for your clients?
I really do mostly marketing. I actually do the mindset work, the energy work in the guise of marketing, let's put it this way.
All right, tell me a little bit about that.
So let's say I'm going to give you an example. A client came recently, and she's like, all over, doesn't have a lot of money to spend. How do we start, right? So she's just going, and I just listened to her for an hour, and I came up and I said, okay, here's the deal. If this is your goal, like you just need to do this one thing, which is called email marketing. So let's just do and forget about everything else for now, because if you don't have the money, so like those are the kind of things I would really tune in and figure out for my clients from an energetic perspective, and also from an analytical, like business perspective, what is right for your business. And then while we are working on email, I mean, just the bulbs go off. Like, why are you not saying this? Why are you not using this, which is already there? Like, people just don't think of all the resources we already have available to us. I think that is our biggest challenge. So I do come in. My first thing I do with any business owner is what resources you have and how best to utilize those before we go more and do more stuff.
So are the marketing and the energy always mixed, or do you have clients that are just uh, human energy clients?
I do have some purely just they just want to create a life which is exactly on their terms. And so I do have just purely energy coaching as well.
Okay. And so can you tell me a little bit about your background? When I always ask people on, or my guests, what is it from their past that led them to now? So I know how you are. I know how inventive you are, innovative, creative, take no bullshit, kind of get things done. Where did that start in your life? I guess I know you well enough to say, okay, this is the piece that I want to focus on. When did that mentality of yours that I just described, when did that start in your life? Um, yeah, let's start with that, and then I want to see how it ties into the work that you're doing now. So where in your life did that start? Was that family? Was that relatives? Was that internal? Was it something you saw that kind of got that fire started?
I think it is two things. Once we all come with certain who we are, right, with our potential on this earth, and I happen to be also born in a family which really nurtured that part of me, the crazy part of me, and I think that's what it is. So, looking back, if I have to pinpoint, there are three things which really I think created where I am today. One thing, every time I said to my parents like, "This is what I'm going to do," right? If it's within their means, first they never said no to it. They never said it's right, wrong, what you're thinking. Second thing, they never asked me how am I going to do it, ever, ever. There was never a question how. When I would say I'm going to do it, they say like, okay, go for it, okay. And the third thing they never asked me is, what's the plan B? Looking back, I realized that was such a huge thing. They just believed that if I'm going to say something, I'm going to make that happen, and that was it. Like there was no other discussions about it. So I think that's where my mindset and energy thing really started. I think from my family.
That's funny you mentioned the plan B. I just saw somewhere like Arnold Schwarzenegger in an interview said, when I did everything you've seen, movies, bodybuilding, all of that stuff, I never had a plan B. In that same kind of mentality you just shared, he went further and said, if I had a plan B, that's taking preparation, that's taking energy, that's taking focus away from plan A. So I never had a plan B. I just poured everything that I had into plan A. So it's interesting that you brought up that example. So
Yeah,
can you tell me a little bit more about your path from India to us sitting here?
just so people know, like everything has been in my life because of books. So I am a big thing about books. I actually don't watch movies a lot. I'm actually watching 4 to 5 movies a year now. That's because of my son, because he likes to go with movies with me, and that's his thing to do. But there was a time when I wouldn't even watch one movie a year, like nothing. So I just read, or I work, or I go hiking. Like my time is more outdoor and all. So my journey to India, just so that you know, like I think we have spoken. I grew up with very bare minimum, but not because I was poor. That was just the way life was. We didn't have a school which taught in English, right? So we had to go to the school. So if you wanted to go to college after that, which was taught in English, then you just have to learn it in college, right? That's what I did. So it wasn't just me. I think it was everybody in the community. But I did grow up with a very powerful community, very powerful mindset, amazing childhood, very happy. I never lagged for things. I never felt that I don't have enough, even though we did not have toys or TV or refrigerator. Like there was nothing. So mo- the main thing about journey is somehow I read the books and I've created this life and I'm here. I'm just literally living everything I've read today. And it's a long story to tell you, but just so that you know, guys, from India to US and being this coaching and building my business, coming to this land of opportunity was I was meant to do that because in India we don't have the opportunities like we have it here. And I really feel almost like not obligated, but like if I don't use this opportunity, who will? Like I gotta be this is given to me, it's a gift, and I am really truly making the best of it. That's what it is.
So what did you, just to get a little more into like the formal side of it, what did you study in college?
Oh, hotel management, nothing to do with anything I'm doing right now.
Yeah, but at the same time, hotel management, it's about the experience, it's about the customer, it's about just everything that goes into building the best experience that they can have. I mean, so I'm sure a lot of that plays into what you're doing today, right?
Yes, I mean, I think everything I am in a way, like I learned to dress there. When I went there, I came from a village. My mom had not even owned a lipstick ever. So I go there and everybody's wearing makeup. They know how to wear tight jeans. And I've always worn my brother's like Louis Lou jeans. So like it was a shock, Everybody knew how to curse. I didn't know curse word. I
Oh,
still remember one of the exams, they asked for the name of alcohol brands. I never had alcohol before that. I actually had to mug it up because I didn't know what's the difference between whiskey and rum or wine, like nothing. So really it did prepare a huge foundation because I learned so many different like things around the world and how people live in those fancy hotels because I worked in second year, in one of the top hotels in India. And you learn a lot with that, yes.
what made you go into hotel management?
Did not have so I was really bad at studying. I hated it, so I just didn't want to be in a school where it was all about books. So hotel management was the only thing I could find where 50% was actual practical things like you have to do and earn the marks, and 50% was theory. So it was just something, I was like, okay, I'm just going to go for something where I don't have to study.
I like that. That's a good that's a good approach. I wish I had used that approach. And okay, so then after college, where'd you go after college?
Marketing. I got right at 21 in a marketing company, and I actually did event management. I was actually so in between in the college, I did a little bit of modeling stunt, like
Okay.
just a stint in the modeling, and I learned about that world as well. But I didn't want to stay in that world. So when I moved to the event management, I actually started to do choreography. I would choreograph big shows with the kids and models and choose the music, have them walk the ramp, decide the sequences, and I was doing marketing at the same time. That was a fun job.
That's awesome. That sounds amazing.
That was amazing.
Okay, and then after that?
Oh my God, you really have to get a whole life story. John, this is,
Not whole life story, but just the highlights. You don't have to go into detail, just the highlights because I'm just always curious about the path that it never looks pretty. Sometimes it's haphazard, it's random, it's not organized and scripted. So I'm just curious, just those jumping points. You don't have to go into the day to day or too many specifics, whatever you want to share.
so I just moved to a different city. So I was living in a city called Jaipur. That was just like at some point got too small for me. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to go to Bangalore. And then I did not know anybody, like literally found a friend. As usual, I do my things my way. When they applied for jobs, got a job, then I was there for a while. And I really, again, I was still in event management and marketing and really enjoyed that. Okay. And then when Bangalore got smaller, I'm like, I'm going to get out of India now. So I moved to Dubai, again, the same way. 15 days, $100, get a job or go home. Got a job there. I stayed there. I worked for a television production company. Then I worked for an ad agency. Learned a lot, from different cultures. And then I met my now husband, and I moved to US in 2006.
Okay. And what'd you do when you got here?
I worked at Radio Shack as a sales rep, like the salesperson on the floor.
Yeah. And
For
then
some
after
time. And then I moved on to marketing at Pfizer, and then I quit my job for 3 years, and then I went back to Cigna, and then I have my business.
so for you, was it just kind of like those jobs, those corporate jobs like Pfizer and Cigna? Was it just that they were kind of too closed off, too narrow, too boxed, where you wanted to kind of grow beyond that, be more creative, more in control?
Honestly, I didn't think so deep about it. They were really great jobs. I enjoyed it a lot. I loved it where I was. I was making a lot of money for the first time, like really good money, right? American money, which is different than Indian money or Dubai money. Okay. And then I just had my son, and I decided to be a stay home mom because I really wanted to concentrate. Like, I'm one of those people, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go all in, or I don't do it, right? So I just quit my job. And then when she went back to school, now I had all this free time again. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to get a job again. Applied and got a job at Cigna. And that made me move from New London to West Hartford. And I stayed in the job until it just didn't feel right anymore again. Like it was just, there was a time when I was like, I'm ready to move to a different phase in my life.
Yeah. And it's interesting that just knowing that book that we're going to cover, now I'm going to ask you to introduce the book, but knowing the book that we're covering, and you had mentioned when I asked you if you wanted to do an episode with me, you mentioned this book, and you've told me in the past that when you were in India, you lived through your books, you took so much from your books. So it's funny knowing the book we're going to cover and comparing it to your life, like you're just always on that journey. So why don't you introduce the book that we're going to cover and then how you came across it?
So this is the book, The Alchemist, right? From Paolo Coelho. Okay. It's actually pretty hard for me to pick this book, honestly. Like I've so many books have impacted. In fact, my Archies and Cowboy Romance impacted my life way more than Alchemist. Alchemist is almost like this is a book where I put my life pieces together, then what not so much I learned, and I'm like, oh crap, this is exactly what I've lived, right? Or this is what I relate to. So this is not a book where I've learned a lot of things. What this is kind of solidify my thinking more or my life more.
Yeah. Oh, and there was a quote. I wrote it down somewhere where, because this has to, I'll ask you just to briefly summarize the book, but there was a quote in here somewhere where it said, it's funny that you're saying that the book kind of solidified, your path. And there's a quote exactly like that in the book where it says, you won't know what all this is for until you get to the end and you reach that goal or whatever it is. Then everything else leading up to that makes sense, which is great because you and I always talk about how important the journey is compared to the actual goal. And I think you and I are of the same mindset where like the journey, the hustle or the work is what kind of keeps us going. We're inventive. We try to bring out the best out of every day. But it's runs very parallel to something that was said in the book.
Yeah, it's such a great book. I mean, again, I say everything in my life is still on books, right? Everything I learned is through reading and writing. Like that's reading has actually led me to writing. Okay, so it was like almost inevitable that I would write one day because
Yeah.
I've been reading so much.
So can you give us just a general overview of the book, just so people that may want to read it just get an idea of what it's about?
So this book, to me at least, okay, it is not a book to be read as a novel, right? Because there's so much deep. So, but in one line, it's very simple. We are here for the journey. And that if we are not enjoying that, because that's where the expansion happens, that's where we get clarity, that's where we keep growing within us and within what who we are. So there's a actually in Bible there's a really great thing. He says, when you become like a child, I'll welcome you back in the kingdom. And people take it literally. It just means you're born so innocent, like there's nothing you know. And then you live through life, okay? And you gain all these experiences, which makes you cynical, which makes you whatever. But then you come back to this place of childlike innocence again, where you are just excited about living. Like, every day you get up, you're excited about that, oh, what's this laptop? What the hair or my nose or my eyes? Oh God, I got fingers. I got fingers. Imagine that, right? Or all the plugs on the wall. Like you are just curious and you're just inquisitive. You are just loving what you're doing.
Here,
That's what it is.
I have the book here, and right, I have the book here. Let me just read something that's in here.
Okay.
And I bring it up only because I think that's so key to this book and the lessons that I've seen that I've learned in my coaching business when I'm working with clients, where when they get to a point when they're working with me, when they reach that sense of fulfillment or that aha moment, or they're like, okay, now I feel comfortable in what I'm doing, so often it's because they're going back to who they used to be. They go into a job, they get a job, they go by the script, they go by the job description, they lose themselves, right? It's rigid, it's scripted, stay within this box, this is your path. And they lose what it is they wanted out of life. So it's just funny that it always seems to be about going back to who you were. You go through life, you gain your tools, you gain your knowledge, your profession, your skills, your education, whatever it may be. Um, and then you take all that and it's like you go back to pick up who you were and bring that child with you, so now that you can mix in the wonder, the excitement, the dreams. But let me just read this. The the main character is a boy in here, and he goes on this long journey because he has this recurring dream, and he's told by I think a gypsy. I haven't read this in a while, but a fortune teller, that he has to go to the pyramids of Egypt to find this treasure that he's dreaming of. Further in the book, here's a part where like his heart is talking to him. And his heart says, "Everyone on earth has a treasure that awaits him," his heart said. "We, people's hearts, seldom say much about those treasures because people no longer want to go in search of them. We speak of them only to children. Later, we simply let life proceed in its own direction toward its own fate. But unfortunately, very few follow the path laid out for them, the path to their personal legends and to happiness. Most people see the world as a threatening place, and because they do, the world turns out indeed to be a threatening place." So that just, and it reminds me of the of this other book, The Four Agreements, where it says that we've just been programmed by society to forget those just simple lessons of when we were kids, of just that wonderment and that excitement.
Yes, but here's the thing. This is also the part of journey. You have to forget all that. You have to learn these all these lessons. And then you gotta come back. So imagine a child who has not gained experience, is staying innocent. We say, anybody can go to the cave in Himalaya and not be angry because there's nothing to be angry about.
Yeah.
But can you be in this world and not be angry? Now, that is what we call enlightened being, where they are living in the world, they're doing everything everybody else is doing. The people like the Dalai Lamas of the world, like, they don't get affected by things, right? They're staying here grounded. And that's what it is all about. You gotta have the experience. So society, the world itself is not bad. What happens, those experience we gain, and we start to say good and bad based on our perspective. Now the universe just keeps delivering more of what we are saying. Oh, the world is so bad. It's like, okay, then I want more bad in my life. Give me more bad. So universe is like, okay, go for it, buddy. Like, I am not asking you. You're deciding that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I said, people go back to their core ideals, their childhood, their dreams, and this. But you're right, you can't have one without the other. So you can't say, "Oh, you should have always stayed in that wonderment, in that ideal." You have to have those obstacles. You have to have the things that aren't comfortable. So again, it goes back to, you have to go to the end to see what all of this is about, all the obstacles, all the challenges of life. So that's one of the major points of the book. But why don't you give like just a brief overview of what it is, um that the Santiago, the main character, what he experiences as he goes through his path, just some highlights of what that story looks like.
I think he just experiences life, right? If he falls in love, he has all this money, he loses all the money, and then it's like every time he wants to quit, right? He wants to go back to his comfort. There's a voice within him which saying, "Stay here, don't go," and he keeps listening to it. He keeps listening to it. And one of the things I really love about this book, and it's just a life like boggling. I've read it so many times. This is my third time reading, and every time I read it, where I am in my life, I learn new things. One of the things he did in the chapter, when he loses all the money, he works for somebody,
Hmm.
a person with a glass shop, and he just starts, and the guy doesn't have, and the guy is very zen, right? And they keep working, and he works for years before he moves on to the next place, right? So that was part of his journey. But there was a beautiful thing they talked about, and it's made such an impression. This old guy wants to go to Hajj, the one of the major thing in Islamic culture, to go to the most devotional place, which is Hajj. Okay, they call it Hajj. I can't remember the exact name, and ultimately they make money, right? Enough, and he says, "Why don't you go now?" And he said, "Sometimes dreams need to remain dreams so we can live." Profound, profound. We here sitting here judging people. Oh, why are you dreaming? And but we don't understand. Sometimes that's exactly where they need to be.
Yeah. And it stands out. One of the parts that stands out is, I think when the boy finally meets the alchemist, he says something like, "I have riches, I have all this, I have all this." He tells him about the dream, But then he's like, I have all these things. I have this. To me, I think about it as success. I've achieved all these things. I have these, resources or money or whatever it is he had at the time. And the alchemist is like, yeah, but that's you didn't get that from the pyramids. Meaning you have this success, but that's not your quest. It's not your personal journey. It's one of the main characters at the start of the book that tells the boy about what the personal journey is. Like it's the thing that's inside of you that you shouldn't give up, that we give up too much of who we're supposed to be because I mean, society is just a collective. So we kind of go along with what people are saying and we forget about what we're meant for. But that's always a good lesson too is we tend to believe that because maybe we have success that's it, that's our personal legend, that's what we're supposed to be doing. I mean, by all accounts, I consider you successful because you've launched this company. You've told me, I'm at the point where I can kind of let it create and step away and just let it go from there. But that to me is a success for you. But I know as one of your friends and collaborators that you're not done. That even though you have one of these riches that is a company that you put together that you formed, you still have much more to accomplish. So I love the fact that it says that even if you have something, that doesn't mean that's your thing.
Yeah, and how do you define? Because this is the thing with success, You're gonna the success is like a goal. To me, success is not the ultimate, goal, like a thing in life. Really, it's if I truly see like what makes me successful is really my this joy, like this excitement about living life is what is the most successful thing, that I still wake up every day and I'm excited about living. I'm excited about my day. I am just happy that I'm alive and I can do this all over again every single day. Like, I think that is more of a success. The money and all, I was just talking to my son today, and we were just like talking about millions and billions. And I mean, I always just give him like, what's wrong with having billion? But he's like, what are we going to do with the money? I said, do you imagine the kind of impact you can make with that? And it was just about the books, right? And I said, look at all the successful people. The Facebook guy, I said, he wears the same clothes. He has probably 5 pairs of jeans. And like I said, if you truly look at those people who have the money, they don't even care for clothes. They don't care for homes. They don't care for things. I said, money can make such a great impact, Kaden. Like, remember that. It's up to you. So never say, like, oh, money, like, oh, there's too much money. There's never enough money if you truly want to make an impact and leave a legacy. And we were just talking this morning. It was so funny about this. Like, how do you define success? Money is not success. It's what you do with it, is what makes you, like, how are you living every single day? Are you happy? That's what's more successful.
Yeah, there was a part in here that reminded me of you when I wrote down a few lines. I went back through the book, looked at my notes, and there was one where I think the boy says like, or it said of this boy Santiago, the main character, that he had lived every one of his days intensely since he had left home so long ago. I believe it was said about the boy, but that reminded me of you when you always say how you live life intentionally. And some people may not know what that means. Some people may not know what that looks like. Maybe some of us are more passive than active, making sure that every day counts. I know for me in the past, I've always had issues with if at the end of the day, for whatever reason, I didn't feel something, meaning I just know when I finish a good day, I'm like, okay, I achieved something, or I did kind of like a certain level of whatever it might be, just making sure that every day counted. So that particular piece reminded me of you when you say that you live with that intentionality.
Yes, I mean, they are living with intent. I think most of us are reacting mostly to situations. We are not deciding what my day, what do I want out of my day, like in the morning, like this is it, like this is how I want to be. It's not so much about what I'm going to do, it's how I want to feel every single day. Like,
Yeah.
that's what it should be about. And then what's giving me that every single day, and what's not bringing that more of that in my life. I think I live mostly from that intention. I want a joyful life. I want to wake up and get excited. So for me, what are the things which are not exciting? Like, let's try to minimize those in my life.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess as a brief overview of the book, there's this boy, um, and he's a sheep herder, and Prati, remind me if I'm messing up the details. I'm not going to go through every chapter, but just an overview, just to kind of give you a sense of what this kid goes through. But he's a sheep herder. He stops to rest at a church, and he has this dream over and over again of treasure. So he makes it to a town. He finds a store, fortune teller that tells him where this treasure is. That he has to go to the pyramids of Egypt. Then he comes across a king who says, in the end, he buys the kid's sheep. Let me know because my memory is absolute shit. Buys the kid's sheep. The kid now has money. He goes to Tangiers. He talks to some guy, I think, in a bar. And the guy's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll take you there." As soon as the kid gives him all his money, the guy's gone. And I think that's why he has to work for the crystal merchant. And he's there for a couple of years, and he helps the guy out. He helps him market his business. The guy's business is booming, as you had said. And again, this is one of those points in the book where the guy says, I think the trip, it may be what is it? Not to Mecca, but the like a pilgrimage is what you had mentioned before,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so the guy says you have enough money, and the kid's like, no, I got to keep going. So then he's in this caravan of people that are heading out in the direction of the pyramids. He meets an Englishman who's looking for the alchemist, who's somebody who can, in that thought, change any kind of metal into precious metals or gold. And the kid's reading his books, he's picking up lessons. Then they make it to like an oasis, I believe. It's out in the desert, and there's all these wars and everything going on around them. After that, I forget. I think he comes across the alchemist, and that's when he's kind of picking up these lessons. And the kid's like, "Look, I got all these riches. I have everything." Or no, in the oasis, he meets Fatima, which is like this girl that he falls in love with. And the alchemist, then he meets the alchemist, and the alchemist says, no, you have to keep going. Then they are kind of taken hostage by somebody, and the alchemist says, this kid's going to perform a miracle in a couple days. And
Yes.
he ends up doing it.
Yeah.
Then he breaks off from the alchemist. He makes it to the pyramids. I believe I forget if he was robbed. This poor kid gets robbed all the time, but he makes it to the pyramids. He digs, he finds his treasure, um, and then he's robbed at that point. And what's funny is like one of the robbers said something like, because the kid had said, "I dreamt of this," and maybe I'm giving too much away, but this overview doesn't give away like the lessons that all the characters give away. So I'm not giving away too much. But these robbers, one of them says, "That's foolish. Your dreams, like don't follow your dreams. I once had."
You gotta stop here because do not give away the end.
Okay,
End
okay.
is, I think, everything, because I think the end
Mm,
is the book, right? Like
yeah.
what he says at the end to that kid, and I think that is the ultimate thing. Like you have to let it reveal to you. And first time when I read it, I didn't even understand what it meant. I'll be honest. Like I didn't grasp the bigness of it, like that
Yes.
last statement when the robber says to that kid. And I'm like, now when I read it, I'm like, holy crap, this book is just for that one line at the end.
Yeah, I read it because it's one of these books that's always on, the top 10 books that you need to read in life, or top 20. I think they're going to make a movie about it and whatnot. And I read it. I think I read it through once, and I'm like, it's all right. And then for this, I went back through and looked at all my notes where I marked up the pages where the quotes were, the lessons, the this, the that. And and Prati, even what you said, when you read it, each subsequent time you read it, you pick something new up. I read this maybe last summer for the first time, then picked it up again just to browse through all my notes and throughout the pages, and it just resonates a lot more now than it did then. Just because I think, especially because I'm a different person now than I was last summer.
Yeah.
I started this podcast. We started our podcast. I'm taking on different clients, even having another kid a couple weeks ago. So I'm at a different point now than I was last summer. So everything has a sweeter meaning. And I'm still working towards my personal legend, that thing that's supposed to be for me. I have my successes per my immigrant parents. Like I have my successes. I have my suburban house, and I got the kids, and I don't have to worry about bills. Their hard work paid off because all this is for them, right? but I'm still working towards that personal legend. So even now, 1 year later after reading it, it resonates more with me. So it's just powerful. Everything. I took notes, I marked things up because they sounded very important and they made sense, but now they make even more sense.
Exactly. So I'm going to read some of the things
Hmm,
which if you tune in, I mean, it has every word here you have to pay attention to. Okay,
sure.
whoever you are or whatever is that you do, when you really want something, it's because that desire originated in the soul of the universe. It's your mission on earth. This made me think about all the thoughts I don't pay attention to. I want this and I just ignore it. Now I don't. If a thought comes, I need to be this. My first question is, okay, if I'm thinking, what is the reason? So I really dig deep into it. There's no more ignoring my own thoughts. This book has taught me that, right? And then the soul of the world is nourished by people's happiness. This was another profound. If I could do one thing on this earth, is to create a place where we can feel more joy. How do we do this? Not just in our life, but how do we just create this space for others to be happy in their own day or find their own happiness? Happiness is not a one way track. So, like, that means I'm on the right track to me because that's all I really truly like. Those are the things when you read. So, I highlighted those. And then another thing, you know, the guy pointed the old man, he pointed the king of Salem, who was actually alchemist in at that time. He pointed to the baker. And he said, when he was a child, the man wanted to travel too, but he decided first to buy his bakery and put some money aside. When he's an old man, he's going to spend a month in Africa. He never realized that people are capable at any time in their lives of doing what they dream of. In the long run, what people think about shepherds and bakers become more important for them than their own personal legends. It's so amazing. And then last, I'm just going to ask this, okay? Because
Sure.
you mentioned the soul, the at the end, the alchemist, boy has to go through a test. They are kidnapped, and he's asked to do something, and he's praying like, "How am I going to do it?" He has no alchemist didn't give him anything, right? No instruction on how to do it. So so the boy began to pray, right? He began, and again, it doesn't matter what the context is. I think it's just listening to it is so powerful. In the silence, the boy understood that the desert, the wind, and the sun were also trying to understand the signs written by the hand and were seeking to follow their paths and to understand what had been written on a single emerald. But that the hand had a reason for all of this, that only the hand could perform miracles or transform the sea into a desert or a man into the wind, because only the hand understood that it was a larger design that had moved the universe to the point at which 6 days of creation had evolved into a masterwork. The most beautiful part, I think, of this is book this, okay? And the boy saw that it was part of the soul of the God, and he saw that the soul of God was his own soul. I mean, there's so much. So it's so beautiful. This is on page 152 on my book. Uh,
Okay.
and then, this,
Here's a
this was profound.
I got and like I said, like I gave an overview of the book itself, but there's what the characters tell him, how they look at it, even where he disagrees, what he experiences. Like it's just got like these great lines. And here's like another paragraph that I had marked up when I read it. This is right before he meets the alchemist. After he had met Fatima at that oasis and had fallen in love, and even she was like, "Listen, you got to go do what you got to do. I'll be here." How romantic. Uh, but this is from the book. Walking along in silence, he had no regrets because he's just to jump in. He's not sure if he's going to succeed or what the deal is. But it says, walking along in silence, he had no regrets. If he died tomorrow, it would be because God was not willing to change the future. He would at least have died having crossed the strait, after having worked in a crystal shop, and after having known the silence of the desert and Fatima's eyes. He had lived every one of his days intensely since he had left home so long ago. If he died tomorrow, he would already have seen more than other shepherds, and he was proud of that. So A lot of it is like you said, it's like life speaks to him at every point and he keeps going, but at every point he says, even if I stop now, the fact that I've tried, the fact that I've had these experience should count for something. And of course he wants to continue, but he realizes that even those experiences are powerful. And I you know paralleling it to me in my life, I feel the same way. Even if I don't get to that personal legend, whatever it may be, I'm happy that I've created this series, that I created our series, that I've, studied what I studied, that I've helped the people that I've helped, that I've coached the people that I've coached. So it's funny that we're working towards what we want, but even if we died today, because you and I try to live as intentionally as possible, we don't let those days slip away just reactive. We put what we can into them.
Exactly. I mean, it's so I don't know how, I mean, books are so impactful. And I read a similar book just recently. Exact same messaging, just in a different, very simple
Mm.
language, not so deep, which is for everybody. It's called The Midnight Library. I mean, I would highly recommend. It's the equal, it's a, I would say it's a parallel of Alchemist for the modern world, right? Like, very simple, because alchemist language can be a little too deep sometimes. It takes a bit of time to really understand what the hell he's saying. Like, what did you just say? Tell me. Like, I have to read sometimes a sentence like 10 times before I could actually understand. Even then, I'm not sure if I totally understood it. But Midnight Library was a little bit easier that way on my mind.
Yeah, what's funny is this book is deep, Alchemist, and I read just in preparing for this that the guy wrote it in 2 weeks, and
Yeah,
people are like, "As deep as this is, how did you write it in 2 weeks?" And he said, pretty much what you've mentioned. He's like, "The book was there; it was already written; it was in the universe. I just had to tap into it." And it sounds a little woo woo, but I mean, I don't know. I believe in that stuff. I believe things are meant to happen if you look for them and find them.
I mean, Paulo Coelho came from such a dark place to write this book. He was the drug addiction. I mean, sometimes you just have to go to that dark place in order to find God, or God which is within you, or the universal energy. There's another one like him, which is Shel Silverstein. He writes the best kid books, man, so deep and so simple and so much fun. Again, he had a very dark life before he started to write those books,
I
and
didn't
he
know
is in
that,
that
and
industry, I mean, you name it, and he has been around. So, like, this is, you also, I think, when I like a book, I want to go dive deep about the author, because to write a book like this, a normal person cannot write. Like, you've got to have some massive, like, so-called dark, or experiences to bring this light within you.
yeah, I mean, I just it's all similar, it's all parallel. You and I have talked about obstacles, challenges, and how those make you better, right? They open your eyes, they provide you clarity, you see the worst. So, like when you're pushed down in a trough and you're pushed down and your face is in shit and you're at the worst possible level, you can turn around and say, I've seen so much bad that you start seeing the good. But it's just such a common theme that I've seen in most books. And the Shel Silverstein thing, I didn't know until like last year or the year before that I read about him. I used to love his books. So I still love those books. They're amazing. And then you read about the guy, you're like, damn.
I know. I mean, I've been reading Shell to Caden since he was a baby, and I used to read those books like crazy, because
Yeah.
they are just so fun, and yet as deep as Alchemist in their own way, but in a fun way for children to learn about the priorities, about life, and there's not one way. It's very inclusive. I just love those books.
I think, yeah, I gotta go back and read those. It's so funny. I mean, one of my guests will be talking about the Dr. Seuss book, Oh, the Places You'll Go. And it's amazing. And I thought it has been funny that I've heard more and more from people like the kind of books that they've read that they've taken messages away from that were kids' books. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. But if you think about what you're talking about with this author, with Shel Silverstein, what they saw in their lives, the lives that they lived, and how they try to incorporate those lessons into their writing, it makes sense. And yeah, you can put it in such a simple way for a child or a young adult to heed the lesson, but not in such a dark way.
Yeah. I mean, there's another book which really started to where I started to let go of my fear. It's so funny. Like I said, my life is all about books. The books come when the time is right. So this is like a 5-page book, maybe six, with the big pictures. It's called Harry the What's-It.
What is
And
it?
Harry the What's-It. It's a
Okay.
children's book, okay? Like literally 5, 6, maybe 10 pages. I don't know, just pictures. And this is a story of this little kid who who's afraid to go in basement because he thinks there's a monster there. What's it? Okay. And then he keeps going but one day the mom goes in the basement and he doesn't see the mom. So now he's like, I have to save my mom. So, the courage comes when something bigger, when you want to save somebody you love, right? So he goes now to the basement and the what's it is sitting there like a big monster. And he's like, what did you do to my mom? Now he's mad. Like, tell me. And he's just sitting there. So he's like, he pulls the nose, like, tell me what did you do to my, and he kept whacking him. Every time he whacks the fear, that monster, the monster gets smaller. Every time he stands up and say, tell me where and the monster keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. At the end, he just runs away because he can't take it anymore. Yeah, so anyways, the monster runs away and he sees the door and the mom is outside, okay? And what I gather from this is when you truly stand up to your fear, fear cannot stand your way anymore. And that really put me on a path to just face all my fears. Like, it was such a simple book. I think Aiden was probably 2 or 3 when I read him. And I kept that book. He's still with me because I love that book and I cannot give up. I read that book all the time. It's 10, but it just gives me, when I feel fear, I go there. All I need to do is whack the fear. That's it.
I like that. And you and I have talked about fear, what it is. It's like the older we get, it's like there's just no time for it. Unless it has physical ramifications, unless something's going to happen to us physically, everything is mental. I don't know. There's just so many ways to talk about it, and that's what I like that you brought up about the other books, the Midnight Library.
Oh God, yes. I mean, it's a parallel to Alchemist, but in a very simple way.
Exactly. Like I like the fact that you said it has the same kind of message, but it's written in a different way. So you have these authors that just provide this insight in different ways. But fear, I mean, I've talked about it ad nauseum, but I like that approach that that book took in terms of um how we wax the monster and it gets smaller. But fear is just, I don't know. It just it's amazing how tangible it is, how real it can feel, and meanwhile, it's just in our heads, but it robs us of so much.
Yeah, I mean, Paulo Coelho has written so many amazing books. 9 Minutes is actually my favorite out of all the books. That's a very different messages. But, just, I think just keep reading, right? Keep reading, keep reading. To me, reading does is one thing. And I tend to apply everything I learn as well in my life as much as I can, if it makes sense. And I think that's where the really is this reading, really truly understanding what you're reading and how you're going to apply those things in your life. Try it out. Not everything works well, but at least there's a different way of living. They show you.
What was the other book about? Nine minutes.
God, that book will change the way we see sex in life, like mind-boggling. It's just literally a story of a prostitute, but it is not. It is again very spiritual book and how we see life, how we live life. You just gotta read that book, And I mean that also changed again the way I think. Like every book, I think makes an impact in my life. That's why I love books, but it just changes the way we think about just sex in general or prostitutes in general. Like it changes everything inside us if we
Yeah.
truly read it. It's a great book.
Are there any other? I know there are a lot of them, but are there any other lessons in The Alchemist you think we should mention before we wrap up?
One, I actually have it ready, and if
Sure.
this is the only lesson, if everybody takes, right, this is the only lesson you need to take, is there's only one thing that makes a dream impossible to achieve. There's only one thing that makes a dream impossible to achieve: the fear of failure.
Yeah, that was another one I saw. I mean, that fear of failure you're going to find in all these different books, in all these different, whether it's a fable, whether it's a story, whether it's a novel, it all comes down to that. How weak we can become if we give into that fear of failure. It's such a waste of time. In hindsight, it's always easier to say that because you see that, your fear. It's this perception, it's like you feel it, and that feeling is worse than anything that could happen to you because your mind is telling you this is what's going to happen. Be careful, stop, go back, turn around. But more and more, it's just you realize how much it can rob us of what we want to do. Not even the big dream, not even the personal legend, but the day to day stuff.
I mean, your personal legend could be like, I've seen one person on a Humans of New York. He was just cleaning toilets, right? He was janitor, but he said, every time I clean, they're going to be the most clean toilet in New York. That was his personal legend. Like,
Hmm.
I really
Hmm.
believe we make such a big deal out of these things. It doesn't have to be any big dreams or anything. You just have to do what you're doing at any given moment to 100%. And then the next thing will again, it will change the path. There new things will come up. So that was his personal legend, right? Cleaning, doing the best when cleaning the toilet. Like I still remember that story. I'm like, again, you learn no matter what you do, it is not about being big or small, it's again doing it right.
Yeah. And it's about doing it for you. You know what
Yes,
I mean? You can't use other people's ideas of success, other people's ideas of careers, of business, of work as your threshold. And that's where we mess up ourselves in the head, is that we use others' barometers to see, kind of compare where we are, where that's stripping us of our ability to reach for what we want. And there's that comparison. Oh, he cleans toilets, therefore he is. Well, that's your perception. As long as the guy is happy, as long as he's doing what he can be proud of, that he feels he can be proud of, who cares? You know?
exactly. I mean, again, to live a personal legend, sometimes you have to work at a crystal shop and walk to clean crystals, and that is part of the journey. Like again, like I really believe this book has encompassed everything about life.
Yeah. Yeah, so even though I gave like that overview and gave you kind of what the kid picked up at different points, again, these quotes that we've mentioned are just but a few. So definitely check out the book for like the details and the story, and obviously the way that I interpret it, the way that I shared that overview. Obviously, the author published this book and had millions and millions of copies sold. So obviously, he put it in a more articulate and beautiful way than I explained. So the meat of the book really isn't given away by anything I said. So please check out that book. Prati, is there anything else you want to share?
I think this is it. I mean, thank you so much for allowing me to talk about books. I mean, I can come every day and talk about one book I like because I have like hundreds of books which have
Yeah,
changed. Every book has changed my life.
I
I
think we've
read.
we've mentioned books before, but I think I have to pick your brain more about what all the different kind of books, because if I'm looking for a certain energy in a book, or a certain anything, a certain field, a certain skill, whatever it may be, a certain story, I think I can pick your brain about what might be a good book to pick. But Prati, thank you so much for joining me.
Anytime. Thank you so much for inviting and talking.
And for those watching and listening, if there's anything that I missed, we're limited on time, and sometimes I get excited and talk about different things, but miss asking certain questions. Just let me know, or reach out to me, reach out to Prati, and I'll try to get those answered. But The Alchemist, Prati's got one edition, I have another, but this is one of those books that's always on top 10 lists. So I highly recommend the book. There's a lot of great lessons in there. And again, it may take a couple reads, but it's all in there. So in any case, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Take care.